Good afternoon from, of all places, Southern Ireland, near to Dublin, County Kildare, isn't it?
That's correct.
And Pipers'Persuasion welcome you here. It's the first of interviews over in Emerald Isle by Pipers'Persuasion. And it's Wednesday, 27th of April 2011 for the chronologists again. And a lovely, beautiful summer's afternoon. Let's hope it lasts. Anyway, we've got Terry Tully here, and Terry's going to regale us with lots of wee stories, but most of all, very pertinent and valuable information. Terry, of course, is a pipe major of the current World Championship winning pipe band St Lawrence O'Toole. And many, many years and generations of work has gone into this work and success. So we look forward, without any further ado, to a successful and informative interview from Terry Tully. Could you tell me, Terry, about your background in piping, your understanding your father and your mother and also your grandfather played bagpipes, eh?
That's right. I started my piping career in 1966. I was taught by my father.
Yeah.
My father was a piper for 47 years. He had been taught originally by his father, which is my grandfather, obviously.
Now, what are the names there? Your father's name?
My grandfather's name was Patrick Tully.
And your father?
My father's Tommy Tully.
Okay, right.
My father passed away in 1984. But previous to that, he had two brothers who were also pipers. His younger brother, Patrick, who passed away when he was 21 years of age from a brain hemorrhage. And the middle brother, John Tully, who would have been a few years younger than my own father, he is still alive today. He's in his mid-80s.
Okay.
So my father passed away in 1984 at the age of 61 years of age.
Yes.
From a heart attack. It was my father who taught me from the beginning right up until the end. My mother was also a piper.
Yes.
Originally, Nan Gaffney was her name. She was a piper with the Dublin City Girls Pipe Band. It was an all-girls pipe band.
Okay.
City of Dublin Girls Pipe Band, actually. My father was engaged to teach that band in the late 40s.
Okay. And
it was there that he met my mother, who at that time was the pipe sergeant of the girls' band.
Was she a good player?
Well, I would have been maybe 14 or 15 years of age before I had realised that my mother was actually a piper. And she surprised us one Christmas by taking out my father's bagpipes and playing a few tunes on them.
Okay.
So up to that, it was kind of I won't say it was kept a secret, but it wasn't broadcast. But I mean, obviously at that stage, she had lost quite a lot of dexterity from her fingers.
So it was when she was younger she played?
Yes, when she was younger she played.
Who taught your grandfather? Did you ever find out?
Well, unfortunately, my grandfather passed away when I was probably around 6 or 7 years of age.
You never heard any chat about it?
No, never heard him playing, and to be honest with you, only vaguely remember the man at this stage.
Yeah.
But by all accounts, he was quite a good player who passed on his knowledge to my father and to his other two sons. And my father, up until the day he passed away at 61, was a pretty good piper for his years.
So very, very interested in giving you a good grounding, a good technical expertise all his life, I suppose, eh?
Absolutely, I mean, that was his major focus in those days, was on technique, embellishments, and to be quite honest, I mean, in those days people were taught differently to the way they're taught today.
Yes.
And I can remember in those days being able to play chitheries and eidries and bubbly notes and hippopos and all of those kind of things that weren't actually needed when you went to learn your first tune.
Yes.
So
there was a lot of exercises first before he went on to the tune.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's just the way it seemed to be done in those days. Well, that's the way it was done at home anyway. But,
yeah.
Which of course stood to me later in life anyway, because when I did come to use these embellishments in tunes, I had a good grounding in.
You understood them and you had them well practiced when you were younger. And understood also that you played largely by ear earlier.
I did. I didn't have much of an understanding about the theory of music up until my father actually passed away, which was in 1984.
Okay.
And at that stage I was kind of thrown into the deep end as the pipe major in the band. And I had no choice at that stage, and I had to go and learn about the theory of music.
Yeah.
In 1987, I brought out my first music book.
Which we'll get back to shortly, but I've got a wee bit of ground to cover before we come up to 1987, and I assure you we will come on to the books.
Okay.
But just, there's one wee point I want to make about that. When you're learning by heart, by ear and that sort of thing, you're bound to pick up the music rather than just strictly what comes off the page.
Yes, absolutely.
And get the flow in the music and bring out the music in the tune rather than rely merely on a metronomic thing off a page of music.
Yeah, absolutely. I wasn't the only one that didn't have much of an understanding about the theory of music in those days.
Yes.
And I can remember everybody sitting around a table like that there, and learning the tunes and the embellishments off my father's fingers.
Yeah.
So I suppose, in a lot of ways, it's you would adapt to the music, and you would get the music into your head a lot quicker.
Yes.
When you learn it from somebody or from a record. As opposed to sitting down with the dots and cuts in front of you and trying to learn it that way.
So slow, careful, and playing safe has never been in your music.
Well, today I wouldn't. I would not teach people like that now myself.
Which brings us round to the fact that you've got to play in unison with the band.
Absolutely. I think it's a good thing for people to be able to pick up music by ear. And even though I was able to read music well and understand the theory of music reasonably well, I still relied a lot on my own ear, especially when it came to learning tunes from CDs of traditional Irish groups and Irish music, people like Alton and Paddy Keenan and all of those people. So I did rely heavily on my ear to be able to learn the tunes that they were playing and adopt them to put them onto a bagpipe scale and write them.
Yes, and of course, you mentioned traditional music, and that was partly from your father as well. He was deeply into the traditional.
That's correct.
Tunes. Was there an accordion somewhere in the story?
He did, yeah. He played an accordion when he was a younger man. Indeed, I can remember several times. There again, it used to be only around Christmas time, the same as my mother. And he would take out the accordion and he would play traditional Irish music on the accordion. In those days, I mean, when I was a young man and a young teenager, I distinctly remember our pipe band as one of the only pipe bands that played quite a lot of traditional Irish music. And that came from my father's background of traditional Irish music. And it was instilled into me in the same way as I'm kind of instilling it into other people now.
And of course, you went on, and before we approach anything about your solo piping or your band, you might as well mention about your connection with folk music and folk groups and that sort of thing, and Ulan piping. You had a set of Ulan pipes I saw in your house. You play these?
The Ulan pipes is a new part of what I do.
Okay.
I've always had a love for the Ulan pipes. In fact, there has been several times when I had wished that my father was an Ulan piper rather than being a bagpiper. The Ulan pipes I've just acquired in the last couple of months actually, and I have started to do some work on the Ulan pipes. I have an accordion, a button accordion at home that I would be more accustomed to playing than the Ulan pipes. But it's the accordion is quite a different instrument to the Ulan pipes. It's quite a different instrument, obviously, to the bagpipes.
And it's a different expression of the music as well, isn't it?
It is. It's a different expression of the music. It's hard to describe it actually. Even the expression of the music on an accordion would be totally different to the expression of the music on a set of Ulan pipes.
Absolutely.
You would have maybe a little bit more dot and cut in music on an accordion as opposed to
the round style.
Pipes.
And you did several gigs over the years with the folk groups, didn't you? And playing the Highland pipes.
I did quite a lot of gigs with Paddy Maloney and the Chieftains. I suppose for many years the Chieftains, anytime they needed a piper, I was always there for them, and it was a great honour for me to do so many gigs with the Chieftains over a period of maybe about 15 years.
Yes.
I played in Carnegie Hall in New York with the Chieftains.
That'd be a good experience, eh?
Yeah. Also played for Gene Butler, the dancer who was one of the founding members of that famous dance group.
Riverdance.
Riverdance, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I played for her as well in Carnegie Hall. So I mean, I've had some great memories and moments of playing with people like the Chiefs.
How did you pitch your pipes when you're playing with these people? Was it a lower pitch or bagpipe? Or?
Well, it is. Well, the bagpipes, as you know, are in the key of B flat.
Yeah.
And the Ulan pipes would be in the key of D. So it's impossible for any Ulan piper to be able to play a tune with a set of bagpipes. Because of the key that they're in.
Yeah.
So usually what Paddy Maloney did when I was playing along with the Chieftains, he would play a whistle. For the other instruments, it's easy enough for
just
them
tune
to
up.
adjust. Yeah, they can drop down.
Yeah.
But it's difficult. Plus, as well as that, because of the fact that the bagpipes are so loud,
It's
they're
achieving a balance between the instruments.
They're a pretty unsociable instrument when you take them out in a pub for to play along with a few of the musicians. You know, the first reaction is, oh no.
Yeah.
Bagpipes.
And so that's the folk side, and that's the music side, and you've been bringing music out in the tunes all your life. And just jumping back to 1971, you played in your first All-Ireland Solo Championship in the juvenile grade at Howth, and you took third place. And that was before you joined the band St Lawrence at Tour in 1973. So in 1971, that was your first sort of major prize, if you like. Right?
It was. From 1966, I started my piping career with the St Joseph's Pipe Band in Clondalkin, who were being taught at the time by my father. Because my father was a founder member of that band in 1937. And in 1966, they started a huge drive on getting the young people from the surrounding areas in to start off beginners, and I was one of those people. So I was with the Clondalkin band from 1966 right up until 1973, and at that time then I moved on from the Clondalkin band into the band that my father was the pipe major of, which was the St Lawrence O'Toole Pipe Band.
So that was 1973?
1973, and I've been there ever since.
And in 1974 the band won the All-Ireland Grade 3 Championship, so it was promoted to Grade 2 in the following year, eh?
That's right. 1974 in Tralee, the band won the All-Ireland in Grade 3.
Yeah.
And at that time there was only just the one grade in Grade 3. It wasn't split into A and B. And from that time then the band was upgraded to Grade 2. And during that period from that time right up until maybe the very early 80s, the band struggled quite a bit to stay in the grade, simply because of the fact that numbers were very, very small.
Was Pitt and Lallard a pipe band in the go at that time?
Oh, they were, yeah.
So they were the band that was sucking up probably all the talent, eh?
They would have been the band of the 50s and 60s.
Yeah.
Even into the 70s, the Fintan Roller band would have been at the height of their career. After that, then when the late pipe major Tim Keogh decided to hang up his Gilly Brogues, the band started to go into a little bit of a decline. Much the same as our own band. Personnel were getting that little bit older. There wasn't that many young people on the scene, and it's almost like the recession at home now in Ireland. There was a recession within the pipe bands in the 26 counties.
Okay.
We did pretty well. When I say that, I mean all of the bands did reasonably well to keep the bands together and to start a big program and a big drive on teaching young people.
Just to bring up the talent that would furnish the numbers for the bands.
Absolutely, and it missed out maybe on a couple of generations where people weren't actually doing that. With the result that it's quite strong today, especially within the lower grades.
Yes.
There's quite a good, a lot of talented bands within the lower grades at home that have great potential to improve over the years. If they can manage to keep their bands together and keep that same kind of drive there to get from one grade to the next.
Yeah.
There's been quite a few bands in the lower grades, in Grade 4 and Grade 3. Last year at the Worlds we had the St Finbarr's band who won the Grade 3 at the World Championships, who are now finding themselves back in Grade 2 again after a number of years being out of it.
Yes.
So there's a lot of potential there. There's the Cullen band in Cork who are a really, really good band down on the border of Cork and Kerry. Con Houlihan is the boss man in charge of that. His daughter Margaret Houlihan, who would be very well known. So
Margaret Hurlin, yes.
she's the pipe major of that band. All of those bands like that are very.
So it's still a good drive there. You met Richard Parks at Lorient.
I did.
In 1983, when the two bands were across playing for the Lorient Festival.
Yeah.
That's in Brittany and France.
That's
for the people that are watching this out in Hawaii.
That's right. That was in 1983. Our band had been in Brittany before that, but we went back again in 1983, and that's when there was a relationship struck up between myself and Richard at that stage. In fact, at that stage, the Field Marshal Band were probably on the verge of, or close to, being in grade 1. I think they went into grade 1.
They were in grade 1 in 1981. Richard told me they get second in the Worlds in 81.
Was that not grade
with 8
2?
pipers. And then, come on, well, he says 81, we'll not argue about that. But he said that you were both in L'Oreal and a couple of years subsequent to that.
We were, and we did strike up quite a nice relationship between myself and Richard, and also between the two bands. And I'm happy to say that relationship has remained quite strong between both myself and Richard and the two bands right up until the present day.
Did he encourage you to go into the solos?
He did actually, yeah. As you said earlier on, I did take part in solos in 1973, which was my first time in the junior or juvenile grade. And I played in the solos for a few years after that, and then I just never bothered with it after that, until such time as I met up with Richard, and Richard encouraged me to go back and play in solos, which I did, and I'm very happy about that I did, because you know yourself, solos is a great source of encouragement for any piper.
It makes you practice as well, and then hone up your skills, your own personal skills.
Yeah. So I was quite happy with that. In 1984, you won Best Junior Piper at the Invitational Piper of the Year event in Mid-Antrim. That's right, yeah. At that stage I was a junior piper, and because of the fact that I won that, I was upgraded to the senior grade the following year.
So All Ireland next year is senior level, third in 86 and 87, second in 88 and 89, and then you've won the All Ireland Solo Championship 90, 94, 96.
That's right, you've done your homework. How you're able to remember those dates, I don't know. Of course you're reading them, but it's difficult for me to remember those dates. I can remember all right.
What was the format of the All Ireland then at senior level? What type of tune did you play?
Well, at that time, it was basically 2 March Strass bass and wheels.
Okay.
And you submitted 2 sets, and you went up to the judge. The judge had a look at what was written in front of him, and he selected what MSR he wanted to hear.
Okay.
It was quite simple.
Mm-hmm.
It's still basically the same today, although they have introduced Pibroch into it now as well. It doesn't have an overall effect or bearing on the prize at the end of the day, but that day is coming whereby the Pibroch will have a bearing on the overall result.
Did you ever play Pibroch?
I didn't, no. I suppose simply because my father was never into it and never encouraged me. Plus, as well as that, there was never really anybody at home that could teach it. If you wanted to have lessons in Pibroch, it would have meant for me as a young teenager to have to travel to Northern Ireland, and at that time I didn't know anybody in Northern Ireland who played Pibroch. So In a lot of ways, I have regretted that I never played a bit of pibroch for the experience of doing it. I did encourage Alan, my own son,
Yes.
to play pibroch. And
But having said that, you've got many Irish airs that are
Absolutely,
along
yeah.
a similar type of theme,
Yeah.
and very long-standing, centuries-old tunes.
that's right.
And you have your own old tunes in Ireland, so which you were through your family fully involved with. So
Yeah.
say your hands full with all that going on without adding to the.
Well, I've often referred to Irish pibroch as our own Gaelic airs.
Absolutely, yes.
And there's many pibrochs going around today that resemble old Irish
Taking their
airs.
roots from these.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. And perhaps we could mention the books now. You brought out your first book.
I brought out my first book in 1987.
Uh-huh.
As I said earlier, in 1984, I was able to read music my way.
Yeah.
But I would not have been able to explain to somebody else or teach anybody else how to read music. So I went from that in 1984 to producing my own book of traditional Irish music, old and new, in the space of 3 years. And as you know yourself, I mean, it's one thing being able to read music, and most people today are able to do that. 99.9% of pipers that say can do it. But it's a different thing when you take a pen in your hand and you want to put to paper what you've got in your head.
There's an absolute talent. You've either got it or you've not got it.
Oh, I
don't think there's any grey areas.
I think it's a little bit like reading a newspaper, and that's the way I've often explained it to people. The more you read a newspaper, the easier it becomes. And I feel the same when it comes to music as well.
It's terrific imagination.
The more you do it, the easier it becomes.
You told me a story before about your father's tune, Tommy Tully's Ear, and I think we'd like to hear that story.
Yeah, it's quite a popular tune. Has been played on many CDs. I couldn't begin to list the amount of people who have recorded it. It's for me a very sad tune, because at the time when my father died in 1984, there was a grave diggers strike in the local graveyard where he was being buried. And in those days they didn't use machinery to dig graves. You did it with a pick and a shovel. So both myself and my brother Brendan, who's a piper as well and now living in Australia, we had to dig my father's grave. It was a difficult thing to do physically, but as well as that mentally, it was very hard work. But I can always remember when I had the grave dug, just going down on one knee on the bottom of it, and I said a little prayer to my father, who had just died the day before. And it was a sad period for me, and in my head I had that piece of music going on all day while I was digging his grave. I suppose it was probably more in my heart than it was in my head.
Yes.
And I had the first part of the tune composed in my head at that time, and then shortly after my father was buried in that, I put the second part of the tune onto it. So that's the story of that tune.
I think possibly I've heard it said that composing tune is like writing a story. you do your best writing or composing when you've got a driving theme or a driving idea that you must express.
Yeah.
So that would be a prime example, really, eh?
It would be a prime example, and you know, for me, it was never the case of sitting down with my practice chanter at a table and saying to myself, okay, I wrote a jig yesterday, I'm going to write a reel today. Right. I always had to be inspired by something, you know, maybe even coming home from a competition. There has been several times that I would get Eileen to take over as the driver, and I would pull out a piece of paper from the glove compartment and write down maybe the first part of a tune that's been going on in my head.
I was smiling here because Jimmy Watts said the same thing. As many a tune was dreamt up at a set of traffic lights and lost when they're through the lights.
Absolutely. There was another tune that I wrote some years after that, and I wrote it on the steering wheel of the car on the way to band practice. And I pulled in under a street light and pulled out a piece of paper, and I wrote down the first part of it before I went to band practice, because I knew that after a band practice and coming home that completely I would never remember it. It would be gone. So you've got to put it down on paper as soon as it comes into your head. When the idea comes, freeze it, get it, grab it with two hands. So many books have you got out then? I've got 4 now. I brought out the last music book, book 4, just simply called book 4, August last year. Great. I wanted to try and bring it out in conjunction with the band's centenary year. Not that it's related in any way, but there was just so much going on in the 1 year. We brought out our centenary book, and the cover of the centenary book was in black, and I just thought it would be a nice idea to bring out my music book and do it in the same colour, in black, to keep it all the same for the 1 year, for the centenary year. Aye. Wonderful memento, really. Yeah. What type of tunes have you got in the 4th book then? Does it vary quite a bit from the 1st book? No, it's basically the same. In fact, there's probably maybe 50% of the music in it that I had composed myself, that has been composed for a number of years. And also included in the book is are tunes from other people. There's tunes written by people who are members of the St. Lawrence O'Toole band. Yes. And there's other people who have included tunes in my previous books. And I just wanted to basically keep it the same. You know, over the period, I think it was 1997 when I brought out book 3, and I had collected a vast amount of traditional Irish music and tunes that I had composed myself after that time, and I've ended up actually in a situation where I've enough music at this stage now to do another book, and my plan was actually to have another book completed by the summer of this year, but that has fallen by the wayside again, so it's on the long finger once more. My goodness, it's a busy life, eh? It's a busy life. It's a busy life, yeah. You became Pipe Sergeant in 1979, St. Lawrence O'Toole, and Pipe Major in 1984. I understand that was just shortly after your father died. And a fortnight later, you're into your first competition, second prize? No, we were first. Well, first yeah. In that grade 2. That was grade 2. Yeah. Right. My father passed away in 1984, and the band were in grade 2 at that time. Okay. he passed away on the 16th of April in 1984, and 2 weeks after that I led the band into its first competition, in a local competition in Rathcoole, County Dublin, as pipe major of the band for the first time. And we were first that day. The only competition that we were beaten in that year, we didn't compete at the All-Ireland. The only competition that we were beaten in was in Durrow in County Laois, which was always a favourite competition of my own father. And we were beaten that day by the St Finbarr's band from Cork, who were a Grade 2 band at the time, under pipe major Tony Sloan, who's a prominent judge now. But that was the last time that our band has been beaten by another South of Ireland band. So the last time that our band has been beaten
was 1984.
1984.
That's quite a record, eh?
It's quite a record, and I suppose, in fairness, it was probably very annoying for quite a lot of the other bands who were always trying to get one up on us, but it never happened.
Before we move into the competition aspect of your band, we've really got to mention concerts performed by your band. You had previous concerts, like in the USA, hadn't you?
Yes, we did a concert in Pittsburgh in 2007. Prior to that, we did our first concert in Kilkenny City at the All-Ireland, the day before the All-Ireland Pipe Band Championships in the year 2000. We had worked on that concert for 9 months before we performed it, and it was called The Dawning of the Day. We went on from there. Our next concert after that was in 2004. We did our concert also entitled The Dawning of the Day in Newcastle, County Down. The following year was our big year, where we were invited by the Phoenix Honda Glasgow Pipe Band to perform the same concert in the Royal
Concert Hall in Glasgow,
which was in 2005. That was very successful for the band insofar as we also recorded it for CD, and the CD was very, very popular, and still selling very well.
Still selling, yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent.
And going on from that, our next big event was in Pittsburgh in the USA. We were invited out there to perform a concert. They wanted us to perform The Dawning of the Day. So basically what we did was we changed quite a lot of the music. We still used The Dawning of the Day, which would be looked upon as the band's signature tune today. But by the fact that we changed some of the sets in it, we called our concert in Pittsburgh The Dawning of Another Day.
Excellent.
And since that we have done a few concerts in Northern Ireland and
What about Ballymena?
We've never done a concert in Ballymena.
Oh well.
No.
It costs them plenty now.
No.
Top band.
The Ballymena, I've been at some fantastic concerts in Ballymena down through the years with the 78s and the Vale of Atholl. Some very memorable nights that we had after with them. But I think what happened to Ballymena was the place was too small for a start.
Okay.
And I think they had some sort of a problem with insurance there as well.
So anyway, you did a concert at another concert, Glasgow Concert Hall in 2010, just last year, prior to you winning the Worlds.
We did.
A lot of work that.
It was a sellout
Uh-huh.
concert. It was entitled Evolution.
Mm-hmm.
And it was simply entitled Evolution because of the fact that it was the band's centenary year.
Okay.
And basically we were just trying to show how both our own band in particular, but as well as that, many bands around the world, how concerts have evolved over the years. So we entitled it Evolution. It was a sellout concert with standing room only, 2,100 people there, and was very successful insofar as we produced a CD and also the band's first DVD.
Excellent.
And to date is selling really well. Very pleased with it.
That's terrific. You've been pipe major since '84, and it took you the '80s, a decade, just gradual working through and building all the time. How did you sustain the effort over that first decade to start producing the results at the top of the first grade?
Oh, that's a long story.
Well, just a few sentences on it, just to touch on it.
I couldn't give it in a few sentences. It started basically in 2007, or sorry, in 1987 and 1988, when the band was in grade 2. It was probably the two most successful years that the band ever had in grade 2. In 1988, we were upgraded to grade 1, and it was very lean, very lean years in terms of silverware, in terms of personnel. We made quite a lot of personnel changes insofar as we had 3 or 4 different leading drummers in the band. Always had the same pipe major, which is probably a bad sign, isn't it?
No,
I
not
went
at all.
through so many leading
You're
drummers.
here and you're world champions, so that excuses everything, doesn't it?
But I suppose it really started for us in 2002, where in Ormo Park we were 6th as a band.
Mm-hmm.
Now, prior to that, for a few years before that, we had been finishing 7th and 8th and 7th and 8th, 7th and 8th, like many bands today that are
Very
finishing
difficult
the
to
same
break
way.
into that first 6, isn't it?
Yes, it was very difficult for to break in. But I found that once we did break in 2002, 2002 was actually the first time that we played in the final of the Worlds.
Okay.
Simply because of the fact that, because of the ruling that the RSPBA had made, because of the fact that our band is an overseas band, it meant by us gaining 6th place at a major championship, it entitled an overseas band for a place in the final.
Mm-hmm.
So 2002 was the first time that we played in the final of the Worlds. And I suppose steadily since 2002, right up to the present day, we've gone from being a regular feature in the top 6 to being a regular feature in the top 3.
Excellent.
And you know, it takes so long for to get from 7th
To claw
into
your
the
way up.
prize list. And you think that when you get there that you've made it, but it takes a long time after that. Well, it did for us anyway. for to get from being a top 6 band to being a top 3 band.
Yes.
And 2009 actually, at the Worlds, when the band finished up in 3rd place and broke that monopoly that went on for 11 years between the 3 bands who dominated it. I felt at that stage that if it took 11 years for to break the top 3, how many more years was it going to take for to break the top 2? But for us, it only took 1 year.
Aye.
I did think it was going to take longer. It was very unexpected, but nevertheless, we enjoyed our win. And
But you had your firsts before that.
We did.
Yeah.
We did.
So it wasn't
2008.
an unusual thing. The only thing that's unusual was the way you're speaking is winning the Worlds, which is indeed just another competition with a Canadian element flung in.
Well, that's very true. That's very
and
true.
You were best that day, and that was it. A wonderful year for you, your centenary year, and your concert, and then winning the Worlds. And what a wonderful performance, or 2 performances, and it's the stability and the hard work that goes on to build that. And so you practice all winter for that, and people would be interested to find out the likes of your winter approach. You've got your players together. You've sorted out your music for the next season. Where do you go from there?
Well, it started for us towards the end of the year in 2010. 2010 was a very, 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 very busy year for our band. So when the season ended, we did take, as we usually do, maybe a month of a break. So we would be getting back to practice sometime around the early October. At that stage, I would have already decided on what I was going to do in terms of what changes we were going to make to the music, whether it's MSRs or whether it's medley. I would make recordings so as that I could give them to Stephen, who is our leading drummer and has been now for a number of years. Because Stephen always likes to have a recording of the music.
What's Stephen's second name?
Crichton.
Okay.
Stephen has been the leading drummer in our band now since 2000 actually. But he likes to have a recording of the music so as that he can play it and have it off in his head before he will sit down and put a score to it. So he needs to know the music very well before he does that. And I think that actually shows in the kind of scores that he comes up with for the music, because they're pretty good.
Aye. They fit the music.
Yeah. So we go on from that then. At that stage, we would have 1 practice a week. Our practices are in the form now of a music stand and a set of bagpipes, with a set of corks in the drums.
Okay.
So
no practice chanters.
No.
Pipes.
No, we don't have a practice chanter practice anymore, and haven't done for a few years now. And what we do is we put the music on a music stand, and for example, if it's a 2/4 march, we would break that 2/4 march down into 4/4, and everybody would learn the music on a pipe chanter as opposed to a practice chanter. So obviously the music would be learned very slowly.
That improves the concentration a wee bit, eh?
It improves concentration, and also what it does is, as we were talking earlier on about people's ability to read music.
Yeah.
And there is different levels of ability when it comes to reading music. But I've noticed that since we have started to do that, the level of ability has greatly improved. So, but at that stage, while we're doing that, the focus is more on technique rather than the music.
Yes.
The music end of it is the simplest part, as far as I'm concerned, and most people will know the music anyway. So the focus is mainly on technique and making sure that everybody's technique is 100%.
Mm-hmm.
So although the music is played very, very slowly, the technique is played in relation to the speed that we're learning the tune at, so as that everybody can focus on making really, really good, clean, tidy, accurate, strong technique.
Excellent.
After that, then we would go on to 2 nights a week.
Mm-hmm.
And it would continue the same way with pipe chanters. We would rarely let drones in during the winter because it's basically too much work to have them in tune all the time. And plus, as well as that, it makes people focus more on what they're doing when they don't have the comfort of drones
There's no hiding place.
drowning out their technique.
Aye, there's no
There
hiding
is
place.
no hiding place, no.
Plus, you've got the side benefit of blowing in reeds.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because you've got drones, so there's more energy going through the bagpipe.
Yeah, exactly. It's great preparation for the player because he's not trying to take it from a practice chanter to a pipe chanter, which is almost like going from one instrument to another.
And relearning your tune.
Yeah. Plus, as well as that, the piper is maintaining his stamina all the time by
Right through the winter. Yeah.
Right through the winter. Plus, it makes the piper take his pipes out of his pipe box at home during the winter, maybe at a time when he might not want to.
Get a wee bit lazy.
Absolutely. So
and all the hemping, the bag, everything's got to be up to scratch.
Exactly, yes.
What bags are you playing? Are you playing sheepskin?
We do. We play sheepskin bags and cane drone reeds.
Okay. And how do you find the cane? That's an archaic question. We've played cane for about 2 centuries. We've gone plastic for about a dozen years, and we're going back to saying, how do you find cane? But for the watcher these days, half of them don't know what a cane reed is.
Well, you're absolutely right, and I would never knock synthetics, whether it's the bags or whether it's drone reeds, because it was to our benefit over a long number of years, I'd say 20 years, that we were able to play for longer, and pipes were always going well by the use of synthetic. We decided some years ago that we would go back to using sheepskin bag and cane drone reeds, simply because we wanted to put ourselves on a level playing pitch with other bands who were using the same setup.
Yes.
And it was a major task for us, because we had quite a lot of young people in the band, young pipers, who had never played a sheepskin bag and never knew what a cane drone reed even looked like.
I didn't know that seasoning ever existed.
Exactly. So it was a major educational process for those people in the band who were basically being taught from the very start on how to work with cane and why it's behaving in the way it's behaving and what you can do to avoid situations like that. So I think probably at this stage this is probably our 6th or 7th year now going back onto the old traditional way. I think they're starting to get used to it by now.
Absolutely. And that leads me on quite nicely to a match day, competition day. You're approaching the first championship event, and you step off the bus and it's raining. How does that affect your cane and all the rest of it?
It's one of the things that you really have to take a lot of notice insofar as the timing is of the essence. Because if you don't blow for long enough, you're not going to bring that pitch up. Your drones aren't going to be settled. If you blow for too long, and it may only be a minute, 2 minutes, you'll lose your sound when you go inside. Some players in the band have quite a lot of problems with moisture and who have to be really careful. I always considered myself to be a world champion wet blower. And there's quite a few pipers in the band who are almost as good as me. So what we have to do is we have to be conscious of the fact that we need to get our chanter pitch up and have the chanter settled with a sufficient amount of moisture on the chanter reed so that it's going to have stability. But we also have to be very conscious of the fact that if we play for too long, that our drone reeds are going to be wet. So there's quite a few of us who will cork our drones after a certain point. We do blow them at the start of our warm-up to get moisture on them and to bring a little bit of stability to all of the reeds, whether they're drone reeds or whether they're
just get heat through them.
Get a little bit of moisture into them, and then at that stage the wet blowers would cork their drones. They will still be affected by moisture, but not severe because there's no moist air passing through.
There's no throughput.
So and at that stage then, depending on the weather conditions and depending on how wet the blower is, it's all about knowing your own instrument and knowing how long you're going to get out of it before it's going to start to
be unstable.
So it's at that stage then each individual piper knows exactly when to take those corks out and to give his drones a blow for maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes before he goes on. So that's the way.
Would it be as long as that?
With some of them it would be. With others, maybe not. For me, maybe 5-6 minutes would be ample for me at that stage, depending on the weather. If it's a nice
if it's torrential rain, it's just.
If it's torrential rain, forget about it.
Just tune up on the bus and walk on the park.
Sometimes that's when you've got your best sound.
I remember we did that in the old Glasgow Police Pipe Band way back 1965, 66. I think it was at Shotts. And we tuned up as individuals on the band bus and walked onto the park with the instruments under the cape, and the first time we put the instruments up in open air was at the starting line, 2 rolls and right into March of Spain reel, and it was like a summer's day. The pipes, and we won. Simply because we'd never exposed the instruments to but of course it wasn't great, not in comparison to what you'd produced on a sunny day, but still better than everybody else that day. And I suppose you've got to, everybody's playing on the same conditions really.
Exactly. And there's quite a lot of bands, even grade 1 bands, who will often leave their best sound in the tuning part. And it has happened to us as well. I mean, it's a learning experience.
It's a horrible instrument, really.
Yeah, it is. It's a terrible instrument. As I said, I'm sorry I never learned how to play the uilleann pipes.
But so there's been quite a bit of discussion. I'm just going to sort of put in a couple of wee odds and bits before we finish, because that says we've been an hour now, and I'm talking about the suggestions about the world's being over 2 days, and the world's been presented in an open arc or a concert sort of style a position towards the audience.
Yeah.
And I know you've got a couple of views on that. Firstly, what's your comment about having it over 2 days?
Well, I can understand why they've let it go on so long without looking for some sort of a resolution, because it's not working, and I can understand how bands that are travelling long distances across the Atlantic Ocean and spending all of that money to get here, to play in a qualifier at 9 o'clock in the morning, when there could be frost on the ground, and their day and their whole year and their whole worlds is over within a matter of minutes.
Right.
And I think it is grossly unfair for bands that are in that situation. I don't know what the answer is, and maybe a 2-day event, maybe that is the answer. I think until such time as the RSPPA take the bull by the horns and go for it, it's not going to be known. But definitely I think that something has to be done to rectify the situation.
And what about the presentation of the band towards the audience? How do you feel, circle or open?
For me, I think when you're playing on a stage in a concert hall, it's fine to be facing the audience, because you could have microphones that are on the stage that will be picking up your drone sound and bringing that to the audience as well as the chanter sound. But on the day of a competition, when you're standing out in a field, standing in an arc, for me, if I was a listener, I wouldn't like it, because you're going to get a full blast of anything from 18 to 25 chanters in your face, with the drone sound going in the opposite direction.
So it's a parting of the ways, really. The back are getting the drone sound, and the front are getting the chanter sound.
I think it's going to lose the whole balance of the instrument itself.
Plus you've got the balance of the drums against the pipes as well.
That's very true. For me, the balance of the instrument is important. That you've got your drones well balanced with your chanter, that the drones are not going to be overpowering it, they're not going to be, or your chanter is not going to be overpowering your drones. And I just think that in that situation, that the audience in particular are not going to realise the full extent of how the band actually sounds, because the drone sound is going to be lost. The drone sound is a big part of the sound of the bagpipe, and I just think that it would be lost. I can understand from the point of view of the audience that it's not right for the performers to turn their back on the audience. But for me personally, it's all about the sound.
And of course the audience, let's face it, are right round, at least start at 3/4 way around the band. So face on would only suit those that are sitting facing the band. If you're sitting at the side of a band, what kind of noise you get, and you just almost listen to the band on a knife edge, because you're just getting a straight line sound if you're sitting at either side.
Exactly.
And you're not getting a true reflection of the performance either, and you can't conduct a straight line either, can you?
Well, you can't. The pipe major will always have to stand in the middle with his back to the audience.
Again, isolated from the rest of the sound in the band.
Exactly. He is the conductor. Plus, as well as that.
And if it's a wet day, his sound's going to get lost completely, you know.
Exactly. Yeah.
You might as well stand with a practice chant in his hand conducting.
Exactly. Yeah, you're right. From the point of view of ensemble, it's also difficult for the pipers at that stage who have their backs to the drum corps and are relying solely on the one person that's in front of them to keep the whole band together.
Yeah.
I just can't see that it will work as good. I think it does work on stage, but
that's different. That's a controlled atmosphere inside.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah. But it remains to be seen.
Okay, put that idea in the bin. Fine. So,
having said that, I don't mind doing it. We've done it often enough.
No,
so I'm not making a case for.
It was just a comment. Okay, you're sitting in a position of strength here. There's no excuses. You're the champ. So where pipe bands, and your pipe band has gone from strength to strength. You've got young Alan, the pipe sergeant. That's your boy. He's done very well with solo piping, everything, hasn't he?
He has. He has done very well in the solos. In fact, from the time he was in the junior grade, he won the junior event 1 year. He was upgraded to intermediate the following year and won that. He was upgraded to the senior grade the following year and won that, and also won it again the following year. So he's one of the only pipers out there that have won 3 All-Irelands in a row from one grade to the next. So, but having said all of that, his focus is not really in the solo circuit.
No.
It's more, he's more band orientated.
Yeah.
Now, I think probably mainly because of the kind of work that he does, it's not really allowing him to have a proper solo career. So he devotes all his time and energy into the band. Both himself and Philip Tasker, who is also really, really good in the band, who writes all of the harmony. The 2 lads write all of the harmony, and they also play a huge big role in helping on the day of a competition in setting the sound.
So they set sound. They help you with the chanters, do they?
Help with chanters, yeah.
And who tunes the drones?
We're very fortunate that we have 3 people who are all members of the band, and all played at various different times. 2 of them are still playing pipes in our new grade 3 band, and they're our drone tuners. So thankfully we never have to let down our pipes, either myself or Alan, to pick up a tuner and go around tuning drones, because it's done constantly from the time that we start.
Yes.
And it makes the job really, really easier. In
fact, you can concentrate on overall performance of the band rather than nitty-gritties, chanters and drones and that sort of thing.
In fact, one of our drone tuners is actually a bass drummer. Never played pipes before. He's around pipe bands all his life and has been a member of the St. Joseph's Pipe Band in Clondalkin. That's the band that I started with.
Yeah.
He was a member of that band all his life. His father was the bass drummer before him. I'm talking about Jim Gallagher here.
Okay.
And he is a bass drummer. He spent about 2 years training with a meter before he felt comfortable and I felt confident to let him take it on the day of a competition. But he's very good, has great eyesight and has a very keen ear as well.
Excellent.
So does a great job for a man that never played pipes.
Oh well, maybe he'll, in his next life, he might be the next pipe major of St. Lawrence O'Toole. He'll be on a set of bagpipes. Terry, thanks very much for today's conversation. Through all the generations of your family, and every success to you in the future. And it's very, very kind of you to do this interview for Pipers'Persuasion, and the best of luck this season 2011 to St. Lawrence O'Toole.
Thanks very much, Alan. It was a pleasure doing it.